So if I were to consider the case where now I've talked in the past about having resistor and capacitor or resistor and inductor, but say I have R and L and a capacitor. And let's say I'm trying to find out what is the natural response of the system, or what is the, even I could find out what is the impulse response. Okay. Now, what is the transfer function of this system? Let's say I'm applying, I want to find out what is the current transient. I want to find out what is I of t. And let's say the system is initially relaxed. So I know that the impedance function is given by what? Z is R plus Ls plus 1 over Sc, right? That's the impedance function. Now, supposing I'm trying to find out the impulse response of the system. That means okay. So what is I of S? Right? Because the impulse response, when I'm having an impulse function, then the Laplace transform of it is just 1. So I'm just left with the transfer function. Okay, and the transfer function, of course, so in this case is an admittance. I've written the impedance on top, and therefore this is equal to I of S. Now, based on all the knowledge we have, we can see how simple it is. So using Laplace transforms, I can quickly figure out what is the form of the solution, right? So first, I will write out in this equation in terms of S. That means I will put that I of S is equal to 1 over, let's take the S terms on the left side. So I have S square. If I multiply the numerator and denominator by S, so the numerator is S over here, and the denominator is S square L plus RS plus 1 over C. Okay. And let's say I divide the numerator and denominator by L, then I would put S over L, and the L disappears here. I have R over L and 1 over LC. That means now if I want to find out what is the form of this equation, can you tell me what will be the form of this equation? The I of t. If I want to know what is I of t, what can I do now? I've already got the transfer function, very quick, and I want to find out what is the I of t. So normally I will follow the method of residues if I want to solve the whole circuit, and there I would say that this is equal to some, if I were to rewrite this equation, I would say it is S by L divided by, now I want to write it in terms of the roots, right? So this is ax square plus bx plus c in the denominator, and I want to find out what are the roots. So I would say that the roots are equal to what? S, the roots are minus b, that is minus r by L, plus or minus root of b square r square by L square minus 4 AC. A is 1. Okay, so these are the roots of the equation. So now I have the term given by this. Okay, these are the roots of the equation. So if I now want to solve this equation, then what are the values I will get? So let us, since this thing looks like, oh, I have to also put a 2a, the whole thing minus b plus or minus root b square minus 4ac by 2a. Okay, so let's just consider the denominator. So we have that it is equal to s. Since the roots are minus all of this and the equation is s minus this, so the equation becomes s plus r over 2l and plus or minus root of r square over 4l square minus 1 over lc. Okay. Now this is basically the denominator term. I have two values here. Everybody is following this? Because this is a second order thing. I just found the roots and then I said that the denominator can now be written like this. One value is r by 2l plus all of this and the second value is r by 2l minus all of this. Okay. And to make life easy, let us put some values here. I mean, let us put some representation. Let's say r over 2l is equal to alpha and let's write 1 over root LC as omega. Now you all know this term from your IC 160. This omega naught is the resonant frequency and you can see how it naturally comes out of this equation over here. Okay, so I would then rewrite the denominator as s plus alpha plus or minus root of alpha square minus omega naught square. So this is my equation. And now what is going to be the, if I want to find out what is the approximate form of I of t, then what is going to be the value of I of t? I of t is going to have some residues, some a times e power minus alpha t. Okay. So let's write it out fully. So e power minus alpha minus root of alpha square minus omega naught square. Into t plus some b times exponential of minus alpha plus root alpha naught square minus omega naught square. Is everyone following this so far? Very straightforward. So when I have an RLC circuit, all I needed to do was just get the Laplace transform. And I know that this is the impulse response. So the Laplace transform is the response current transform. Current is nothing but the admittance function. And now I want to find out what is I of t. I'm going from I of s to I of t. And I know that by inspection, I can directly tell from the denominator what are the roots of the equation. And therefore, this is going to be the form of the equation. So what does this tell you? Let's say that supposing we have multiple conditions now. That means unlike in the past, right, when I was solving RL circuit, I said that the solution was e power minus RT over L. But here I have this formula alpha and omega naught, and this value of this function depends on what is the relative values of alpha and omega naught, right? So let's consider the case. Let's say alpha naught. So alpha is r over 2l. So let's say that alpha is greater than omega naught. Okay, that means we are saying that r over 2l is greater than 1 by LC. Okay. Or I should say, let's go as alpha square and omega naught square. Then we can do the comparison. So r square over 4l square is greater than 1 over LC. Then this is case 1. Case 2 is alpha square is equal to omega naught square. Case 3 is alpha square is less than omega naught square. Okay. So in this comparison, when I'm doing r square over 4l and 1 over LC, then the L and L cancel out, and I'm basically left with r is greater than whatever. So that's the internal terms. Okay, we don't need to worry about the exact expression. But if you consider here that alpha square is greater than omega naught square, then this square root term is a real number. This square root term is also a real number. And what can you say? If you look at the exponent over here more carefully, then this is a minus alpha and this is minus of some positive number. That means this is a decaying exponential function. Here I have minus alpha plus something. But since alpha is a positive number, omega naught is a positive number. I mean, here you have alpha square and omega naught square. So alpha square minus omega naught square will always be smaller than alpha, right? And because of this term will also be overall it will be a negative number. That means over here, what I mean to say is, let's use a different color. Alpha is always greater than square root of alpha square minus omega naught square. Because alpha is nothing but root of alpha square. Correct? So square root of alpha square is always going to be greater than alpha square minus omega naught square. So this term in the first is always greater than the second term. So even though there is a positive sign here, overall I will have a negative sign. Okay, overall I will have a negative sign. So I have decaying exponential. So if I go to case 1, two decaying exponentials. What about case 2? In case 2, when alpha is equal to omega naught, then this term cancels out. This term cancels out. Okay, when alpha square is equal to omega naught square. But there you have to be careful, because here if I see the denominator, that means when I say alpha square is equal to omega naught square, that means this term has vanished from the denominator. Okay, the square root term. So what happens to the denominator? The denominator becomes s plus alpha whole square. Okay, if the denominator becomes s plus alpha whole square, then we saw this interesting thing yesterday, right? If the denominator is s plus alpha whole square, then what is the inverse Laplace transform? It will become t times exponential of minus alpha t. Is everyone following this so far? So basically what happens is, when the denominators are unique poles, that means I have the second order equation and then the denominator has two poles and the poles are unique, they are separate poles, then I'm getting two separate exponential functions. Okay, and because the two exponential functions are different, so in the case 1 I have just two decaying exponentials. But in case 2, when the exponential functions are the same, that means it is called resonance, right? So when there is resonance, then this denominator becomes nothing but s plus alpha square, as shown over here. And because of that, the inverse Laplace transform of t e power minus alpha. So you remember yesterday we drew some curves. We said that I have two decaying exponentials that are adding up. In the second case, I have the function which is going up and then going down. Okay. And what about case 3? Case 3 is when alpha square is less than omega naught square. So then I have a complex function because this is a square root term. So now I have a term in the denominator one over s plus alpha plus j omega, and the second term is s plus alpha minus j. I should not use omega, let's call it beta so that there is no confusion. So there is some alpha plus j beta and alpha minus j beta. Okay? So there become two terms like this. And if I were to take the inverse Laplace transform, then I will have again, instead of two decaying exponentials, now I'll have two complex exponentials. That means my solutions become e power a into e power minus alpha t into exponential of j beta. I'll not put the a here. So it's a times exponential of j beta plus b times exponential of minus j beta. Okay. And you know that when you have these complex exponentials, that means what will happen is you will end up having some kind of sinusoidal function, because exponential of j something is cos beta plus j sine beta, and this is cos beta minus j sine beta. So in the end, you will have some function that is of the form e power minus alpha t and sine, let's say some beta t, okay, with some constants over here, some constant k. So the fact is now you'll have two functions. One is exponentially decaying and one is a sinusoidal function. So what you may end up happening is you will have a curve that looks like this, that you have a sinusoidal function that is function over here, and it is exponentially decaying. So you will have an other function on top of it, which is going down. Okay. So this is an exponentially decaying function. So then what will happen is you will actually end up having that sine function which is going between them. That means there is a sine function and it is also exponentially decaying. So these cases are called what? Case 1 is called overdamped. It is called overdamped because there are two decaying exponentials. That means the response is getting damped. Damping is to reduce something. So case 1 is called overdamped. Case 2 is called critically damped. It is called critically damped because here what is happening is there is a damping function which is going down, but there is also an increasing function. So you see this kind of curve, okay? So this is like a critically damped function. This is overdamped. And then finally we have what is known as the underdamped. That means in this case, you have a exponentially decaying function, but there are oscillations going on. And because of the oscillations, this function is not properly damped, in the sense the response is going on varying. At the same time, it is also superimposed on a decaying function. Okay. So this kind of behavior, now you can quickly figure out. So the case of whether it is overdamped or critically damped or underdamped, it depends on what is the relative values of R, L, and C. And you can take some examples. For example, let us say that in this circuit, we put R equal to 0. If I put the resistance equal to 0, then you can see that the resistance term is contributing to alpha. If alpha term is 0, that means this decaying exponential is gone. If this decaying exponential is gone, that means I'm left with only the beta term, the second term. Because you see the roots were R by 2L, this term has vanished because I put R equal to 0. This term has also vanished. So I'm only left with minus 1 by LC, and that means this is a complex function, because now this will become j times root of 1 by LC. And because this is a complex function, that means this first term will get vanished and I will be left only with the second term. So if R is put to 0, then what will happen is this will be a non-stop oscillating function. So if I just give some input, then because there is no resistance over here, what will happen is the current will keep oscillating. Okay. And the reason for that we already know. In one cycle, the capacitor gets charged. In the second cycle, the capacitor is charging the inductor, and then the capacitor gets discharged. Once the capacitor is discharged, the inductor is charged. Then again, what happens is the inductor, due to current continuity, current keeps flowing, again it charges the capacitor. So in that sense, the capacitor and inductor keep charging each other. So that's what is called a LC circuit. So you see how we did not do any complicated math. We did not solve many equations. we just did some intuitive work. We just plugged in the value of the roots. We got the solutions. We saw that there are 3 cases with the RLC circuit. And now based on that, we can also extract the other circuits. Like if I want to get just the LC circuit, then LC circuit implies, this is also called a tank. Set resistance is equal to 0, and therefore you get I of t is equal to some k times sine beta t, since alpha is equal to 0, right? So just based on the value of alpha setting it to 0, you got what is the value of a LC circuit. So you always have a constant oscillation. So this is the situation that in reality when you have an inductor and capacitor, then what happens is the inductor has some inherent resistance to it, okay? And due to that inherent resistance, there is always an R present in the circuit, and so there is some dissipation. Or even the wires which are there in the circuit, they have some dissipation. So that's what is reflected by this resistance R. If the circuit was a perfect conductor, that means there is no resistance, then it will constantly oscillate. Because I have a resistor, then as the energy is transferring between the inductor and capacitor periodically, it has to flow through the resistor, and the resistor dissipates the energy. Okay, and therefore overall the circuit decays to 0. So the decaying exponential term, now you understand, because it has alpha term, so that decaying exponential is coming due to the resistance, and the oscillating parts are coming due to the inductor and capacitor. Similarly, you could even obtain what is the RL circuit. Say I put C equal to 0, then what will happen is you'll have to work out this a bit and see what happens. Okay, so that's basically second order circuit. So what we noticed is some observations from the circuit is that when the denominator has complex functions, that means the denominator, if I have a function of s plus alpha, this is exponentially decaying. Because I get e power minus alpha t. If I have something like 1 by s square plus beta square, then this is like a complex function. This becomes like a sinusoidal function. This is a sinusoid. Okay, sinusoid means it can be either sine or cosine. Because this case, what will happen is it is 1 by s plus j beta, s minus j beta, and therefore what you will get is two exponentials of the form e power j beta and that will lead to some k times sine beta. Okay. So when you see terms that look like s plus alpha, it is exponentially decaying. If you see an s square plus beta square term, then it is sinusoid. When you saw the RLC circuit, we have Ls and we have 1 over Sc, and because these s's cross multiply, when I get this equation, then I have a s square term. The moment I have an s square term, then this is a second order system, and because it's a second order system, you can expect that either there will be exponentially decaying if it is over damped, or it can be critically damped, or it can be under damped. Okay, and each of those cases corresponds to different kinds of roots. In the over damped case, what we had is we had something which is, let's write it down, that is s minus alpha square. So this is like the over damped case. Okay, and here what we have is sorry, not over damped, this is the critically damped case, and here what we have is the response is t times e power minus alpha t. Should write this as plus alpha. Okay, so this is a simple case where I have multiple poles. This could be of the type that is 1 by s plus alpha, s plus beta. Then I have a response which is of the form a e power alpha t plus b e power minus beta t. So if alpha and beta are different, then I have two exponential functions. If alpha and beta are same, then it becomes s plus alpha square, and that gives me this t times e power minus alpha t. Okay? So that's the part you have to be careful of. You should not think that if alpha is equal to beta, then from this equation I can say that I have 2 times e power minus alpha t. It's not 2, it is t times. So this point is quite important, you have to keep in mind. And then if you have s square plus beta square, then you can resolve it as a complex function, s plus j beta. You get complex exponentials, and then when you solve them, usually what you'll end up having is some sine beta or some cos beta. Okay. So these are the different kinds of functions. What if you were to have a sinusoidal function? Again, let's go back to our original RL circuit. So and now my input voltage is some V naught sine omega t, or let's say V naught cos omega t. Okay. Now I can quickly find out what is the current. First of all, I can say that I of s is equal to V naught into s over s square plus omega square, because I know this is the signal, this is the response, this is forcing function, and then I have the transfer function or network function, that is 1 by r plus ls. Now I can very quickly start solving these circuits. And now I know what are the roots. I have three roots. I have s plus j omega, s minus j omega, and s plus r by l. Now, what are the roots that I'm going to get out of this equation? I can apply the partial method of partial residues, partial fractions, and then I can method of residues and get the answers quickly. But again, let's do some observation. I have three kinds of solutions here, right? Because I have three roots. I have this, I have the s plus j omega, s minus j omega. If I have s plus r by l, the solution of that is going to be some e power minus rt by l. The solution of this is going to be some b times e power minus j omega. And the solution of this is going to be c times e power some plus j omega. Now, there is the important point to keep in mind. Supposing I'm doing the sinusoidal signal, okay? That means the sinusoid is anyway oscillating over time. And here I have a cosine signal. So I know that as if I want to find what is the steady state response, let's call this as steady state response. Then steady state response means I'm sending t is equal to infinity, right? That means I'm trying to find out in steady state what is the response of the circuit. Since the input is a sinusoid and it is going on varying, therefore you expect that the current through the circuit that will also keep following the input, because the input is continuously varying, right? Supposing my input were a step function. If the input were a step function, something like this, then I know my output what will happen is, because it is a step function, then initially when the voltage increases, then what will happen is the entire voltage will like drop across the inductor, and as the inductor starts getting charged, current starts flowing, and as current starts flowing, you will get a IR drop over here, and gradually the voltage will uh, fall entirely across the resistor. Okay, and the inductor, because this is a DC, a step function is a DC, so initially it is like a abrupt change, and inductor cannot change current abruptly, so the entire voltage will drop across the inductor. The inductor will get charged, gradually the current will start flowing, and as the current increases, the entire voltage drop will be across the resistor. Finally, the inductor becomes a short circuit, because we know that for a DC component, inductor is a short circuit. So that's how we know that in a transient response of a RL circuit to a step function, you will have something like that. The current is, if I call this as V of t, then that implies the I of t will be something which is proportional to e power minus RT by L. And we know that the current will gradually increase. So I should put 1 minus e power minus RT by L, because that means as t tends to infinity, this term will reduce, and I will have a current which is constant. Okay. And I even know the constant value of current. I know that constant value of current is going to be V divided by R, because the entire voltage will drop across the resistor and the current flow will be V by R. So what I'm trying to get across to you is, once you start seeing these circuits, initially we did everything mathematically. Now we are also trying to solve them using common sense and intuition. I know the physics of inductor. I know the physics of a capacitor. I know how these circuits are supposed to behave, the circuit elements. So if I were to see a circuit like this, I should not waste too much time doing many calculations. I should be able to quickly figure out. So if it's a step function, I know the answer now already, right? Because I've worked it out a few times. Similarly, if I have a cosine input, then what happens is I get these kind of poles at the denominator, and the transfer function of the system will always give me this exponentially decaying function. But I know that if I have a cosine input, then the output of the system will also be a cosine. Output, when I say output, I mean the current. We are trying to find the current transient over here. What is I of t? So when I'm trying to find the current response, not transient, current response, then what I know is I don't have to worry about this term, because in steady state, as t tends to infinity, this term will vanish. Only remaining terms will be these two. Okay, I should have written this as j omega t and minus j omega t. The function t, the variable t is missing there. So actually, I don't have to bother solving for this first term. So now if I go about solving this expression, what I will do is I will say I of s is equal to V naught over L. And first I want to solve for the term which is s plus j omega. Okay, so this I'm neglecting because of steady state. Okay, so I'm only going to solve for the remaining two terms, the s plus j omega and s minus j omega. But although I'm neglecting this solution a e power minus RT over L, I cannot neglect the term while I'm trying to find the answer for these two, because this is one combined function. Okay, so what are the method of residues? I've taken V naught by L outside. First I have to put s is equal to minus j omega. So what I get is minus j omega plus R by L. That's for the first term, into the numerator is minus j omega and denominator is minus 2j omega. Is this correct? Because we are solving for this term. We put s is equal to minus j omega. And if s is minus j omega, then the numerator is minus j omega. I have minus j omega plus R by L over here. And this term becomes minus j omega minus 2j omega. What about this term? This is minus j omega plus j omega, which is 0, but we are not considering this, okay? Because we are trying to find out the residue of this term. So this term is not considered. You have to consider all the other terms. Similarly, if I go to the next case is I'm finding the residue of this s minus j omega term. So I should now put s is equal to j omega in the remaining terms. So the numerator becomes j omega, denominator is 2j omega, and what is the last term? It is j omega plus R by L over here. J omega plus R by L. So you see, although what we are discussing is a long procedure, but once you understand this process, it is now a matter of seconds. You can quickly solve this kind of system. Okay. So now you are left with I of S is V naught by L into, let's cross multiply the L's. So the L's come out. I'm taking the L inside the expression to make life easy for me. So that becomes 1 by R minus j omega L. Okay. Into minus j omega is cancelled out. I can take this 2's outside. So V naught by 2. And of course, I missed one term here. What is the term I missed? I should write the original, the expression. So this is 1 by S uh, plus j omega, and this is 1 by, okay. What I forgot to write is the original terms themselves, because this part is only the residue. Okay. I am calculating this as A by S plus j omega plus B by S minus j omega. So when I put S is equal to minus j omega in this expression, what I calculated was the residue. This is only A. I forgot to write this term 1 by S plus j omega. Okay? So that has to be there. So now I'm left with 1 by R minus j omega L into 1 by S plus j omega plus 1 by R plus j omega L into 1 by S minus j omega. And that is giving me this expression P naught by 2 into e power minus j omega t by R minus j omega L I of t. And this is plus e power j omega t by R plus j omega. Fine. So you can simplify this further by doing some cross multiplication. This R e power minus j omega t, and over here R e power j omega t, and then there is j omega L e power minus j omega t and minus j omega L e power j omega t. Okay. So that would be written as P naught over 2 into R square plus omega square L square, that's the denominator, into R times e power j omega t plus e power minus j omega t plus j omega L into exponential of minus j omega t minus exponential of j omega t. Right? So that's what we are getting. You have to check this algebra on your own later on. As I'm doing it in live, there may be some mistakes, but I think it seems fine so far. So this first term is nothing but cos omega t, and this second term is nothing but sin omega minus sin omega t. Okay, so it is nothing but v naught by 2 into r into r cos omega t. It should be 2 cos omega t, so this 2 cancels out. Okay, so it's 2r cos omega t minus 2 j omega L sin omega t. Okay, 2 and 2 are cancelled. So you can see how this has worked out conveniently. Okay. And this should have actually been divided by 2j. So it is sin omega t by j. So this j will also cancel out, because e power j omega t minus e power minus j omega t is equal to 2j sin omega t. So what I should have written this as minus 2j sin omega t. Let's just rewrite it carefully. So the 2 and 2 were cancelled out for the first term, and then for the second term we had minus 2j sine omega t into j omega L. Okay. So this 2 has cancelled out, and then the j square becomes 1, and then you're left with omega L. So this term becomes r cos omega t plus omega L sine omega t. And then you know that we can use this kind of phasor notation that you've learned in the past. You can say that if tan theta is equal to omega L by r, then r can be written as you have this sine theta and cos theta notation. Okay, and you could write this as v naught by root of r square plus omega square L square into r over, right? This is what I meant, those magnitude representations. So you see, after all this complicated math, it's simplifying very comfortably. So this is that prefactor, I'll just call it as k into cos omega t cos theta plus sine omega t. I think it should be sine theta. Right? Did I get this right? I think this theta maybe cos and sine are interchanged. So let us just check that. So usually it is sine by cos. So the omega L should be sine and cos. Okay. So this is basically some k cos omega t minus theta. This is I of t. Okay. So just look at this. So we can stop here. So basically I of t is k cos omega t minus theta. Finally, I had an RL circuit. I applied some response, some forcing function, which is V naught cos omega t, and my response is same thing. The k is nothing but V naught by some factor times cos omega t minus theta. That means I'm getting a sinusoidal response only, right? The output is following the input, but there is a constant phase difference. And what is that phase difference? That is given by tan theta is omega L by r. So supposing my sinusoidal function, I mean, we can again observe this, right? So let's say that difference theta is due to omega L by r. So given that this is a, let me just redraw it here. We have an RL circuit. So if R tends to 0, that means this is purely inductive. If it's a purely inductive circuit, then this R tends to 0 means this tan theta tends to pi by 2, right? So this is the nature of an inductor, that the current lags the voltage by pi by 2. So this will become omega t minus pi by 2. Supposing L is equal to 0, if I put L is equal to 0, then this tan theta becomes 0. So theta is 0. That means it's a purely resistive circuit. If it's a purely resistive circuit, then the current and voltage are in phase. So if it is only R, then the theta term vanishes. If the R is 0, then the theta term becomes minus pi by 2. So this way you can see how there is a change between the impact of the resistance and the inductance. And then you can have different values of L and R that are in between. Similarly, you can see the frequency behavior. Supposing the frequency is 0. If it's a 0 frequency, that means, this theta becomes 0. And therefore, of course, when I have a 0 frequency signal, if I put cos omega t, then it's almost like a step function. Whereas if I have a high frequency signal, then again the effect of inductance becomes large. That means I have more phase shift as the frequency increases. As the frequency becomes very small, then it becomes like almost like a, that means there's no sinusoidal signal at all. It's just a step function, and so it's a DC current is flowing in the circuit. So the theta becomes 0. So what we did today is more or less we solved two simple problems actually. We saw what is the sinusoidal response and we saw what is the response to a second order circuit, an RLC circuit. But our aim was to do the math of Laplace transform, at the same time get an intuitive understanding of how to express the circuit behavior. What is the role of the different elements in the response of the circuit and how to get to it without doing too much complicated math. So by just using some intuition and some mathematics, can I quickly get to the answer? Can I figure out that in what case the circuit is going to be over damped, critically damped, or under damped? When would I get functions like t e power alpha t, like over here in the critically damped case? Or if I have a sinusoidal RL circuit, if I have some sinusoidal response, it could have been RC also, doesn't matter. Then what I know is that I can neglect for steady state, I can neglect the exponential terms, so I can save my calculation time. I have to worry about only the complex exponentials. And you always note that supposing I have cos omega t or sin omega t, I will get a denominator term as s square plus omega square. If I get s square plus omega square, I will always get two poles, s plus j omega, s minus j omega. And because I have those two poles, my response will always have two terms, e power j omega t, e power minus j omega t. And they will always combine with each other, and again they will become a cosine or a sine function. So whenever I have a cosine or sine input, I will always get the same cosine or sine output. Only difference is I will have a phase shift. Okay. So these observations you understand carefully and keep in mind. So let us stop the recording here.